Welcome to The Awakening, Black Women United. I am your host, Sherry Danny. Subscribe, like, share, comment, and hit the notification bell so you know every time I upload a new video. Could a debt from centuries past be settled in the present day? This question echoes in the chambers of city halls across America as the topic of reparations for slavery stirs debate. Let us first journey back to the 16th century, when the concept of land grants first surfaced in the area now known as the United States. Countries including Spain, Portugal, the Netherlands, and Britain issued grants to establish settlements, missions, and farms. A headright system existed where immigrants or those funding their passage received land if they survived for a set period. As English colonial law evolved, these headrights transformed into patents. Patentees were obligated to improve the land, cultivate at least 1 acre, and build a small house. Failure to do so returned the patent to the federal government. Land grants continued into the 19th century, marking a significant phase in American history. Federal lands were donated for diverse purposes, from universities to railroads, from old-age pensions to homesteads for farmers. These land grants, widely agreed, had a positive impact on the U.S. economy. Fast forward to the present day. The echoes of history reverberate in the call for reparations for slavery. About a dozen cities in the state of California have local reparations programs, fueling hopes for a national policy. Yet, despite years of lobbying and a 3-year national reckoning over race, the idea of reparations faces strong opposition. A significant portion of Americans do not believe that the descendants of slaves deserve reparations. The reasons vary, from the impossibility of placing a monetary value on the impact of slavery to the belief that African Americans are treated equally in society today. Professor Tatish Nteta of the University of Massachusetts Amherst found that opposition to reparations extends across racial lines. A large majority of white adults, as well as a majority of Latinos and Asian Americans, oppose reparations. Meanwhile, a large majority of Black Americans support them. Age and political affiliation also play a role, with younger individuals and Democrats showing more support. So we return to the question, can a debt from centuries past be settled in the present day? The history of land grants and the present debate on reparations shed light on America's complex relationship with its past. The resolution of this debate will undoubtedly shape America's future. As we wrestle with these questions, we must remember that the echoes of history are not merely remnants of the past, but whispers guiding our future. Welcome to The Awakening, Black Women United. I am your host, Sherry Danny. Subscribe, share, like, and comment. Here's why African Americans deserve reparations. What is slavery? The ownership of a human being as property, chattel. How did the economies of the North and South differ in the early 1800s? The North was manufacturing and had factories. The South was agricultural, relying on African slave labor for farming cotton and tobacco. What was the Underground Railroad? It was a series of tunnels and private homes that white abolitionists used to help runaway slaves escape the South and go to northern states and Canada. The life of the slave. Africans as chattel property in North America, the Caribbean islands, and South America. Slavery timeline. History of slavery in America. Timeline 1501 to 1865. 1619. The first African slaves arrive in Virginia. 20 Africans arrive at Jamestown, Virginia aboard a Dutch ship. See slave trade, slavery, and early anti-slavery. 1645. First African slave ship, the Rainbow, sets sail. 1663. First major African revolt against slavery in Gloucester, Virginia. 1688. Quakers in Philadelphia make the first protest against slavery. 1712. African revolt against slavery in New York. 1712. Pennsylvania passes a law preventing the importation of slaves. 1739. Major African revolt in Stono, South Carolina. 1741. African revolt in New York City. 1775. African soldiers fight in the battles of Bunker Hill, Concord, and Lexington. 1777. Vermont becomes the first state to abolish slavery. 1787. Northwest Ordinance prohibits slavery in the Northwest Territories. 1787. U.S. Constitution is drafted. 1788. U.S. Constitution was officially ratified by the signing of New Hampshire on June 21, 1788, thus extending slavery. The 1789 U.S. Constitution officially replaced. Welcome to the Awakening, Black Women United. I am your host, Sherry Danny.
Call soldiers to come and kill us now. Speaker. We are not going to be addressed by criminals. Go and address prisoners, not members of parliament.
Back to me,
Call soldiers to come and kill us now. Speaker. We are not going to be addressed by criminals. Go and address prisoners, not members of parliament.
Back to me,
The Articles of Confederation on March 4th, 1789, when the First Federal Congress assembled in New York. 1793. Eli Whitney's invention of the cotton gin greatly increases the demand for slave labor. 1793. A federal fugitive slave law was enacted, providing for the returned slaves who had escaped and crossed state lines. 1,800 Africans in Philadelphia petitioned Congress to end slavery. 1804 Ohio black laws prevent movement of Africans. 1808 U.S. prohibits importation of Africans for slavery. 1811 Africans revolted in Louisiana. 1820 The Missouri Compromise banned slavery north of the southern boundary of Missouri. 1822 Denmark Vesey, an enslaved African-American carpenter who had purchased his freedom, plans a slave revolt with the intent to lay siege on Charleston, South Carolina. The plot is discovered, and Vesey and 34 co-conspirators are hanged. 1831 Nat Turner, an enslaved African-American preacher, leads the most significant slave uprising in American history. He and his band of followers launch a short, bloody rebellion in Southampton County, Virginia. The militia quells the rebellion, and Turner is eventually hanged. As a consequence, Virginia institutes much stricter slave laws. 1831 William Lloyd Garrison begins publishing The Liberator, a weekly paper that advocates the complete abolition of slavery. He becomes one of the most famous figures in the abolitionist movement. 1839 Cinque leads an African revolt aboard the ship Amistad. 1841 Africans revolted aboard the ship Creole and fled to the Bahamas. 1846 The Wilmot Proviso, introduced by Democratic Representative David Wilmot of Pennsylvania, attempts to ban slavery.
Babu Buteles, do you want to rise on a point of order?
Honorable Speaker and Honorable National Chair of the National Council of Provinces, Ministers, Deputy Ministers, Honorable Members of the Judiciary, Mr. Ndozi has suggested that I should leave here because he says it's going to be quite rough. I don't know where to go with it.
In 1849, Harriet Tubman escapes from slavery and becomes one of the most effective and celebrated leaders of the Underground Railroad. 1850. The continuing debate whether territory gained in the Mexican War should be open to slavery is decided in the Compromise of 1850, includes the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. California is admitted as a free state. Utah and New Mexico territories are left to be decided by popular sovereignty, and the slave trade in Washington, D.C. is prohibited. It also establishes a much stricter fugitive slave law than the original, passed in 1793.
Because clearly,
President Zuma is the one that must leave.
But we are not going to allow
we did nothing
you
wrong
to have honorable members feel threatened because you have a campaign to come and disrupt
the gentlemen
a joint sitting.
Not going anywhere. I assure you are not going anywhere.
Honorable Shibambu,
yes.
The president of this country is going to deliver the State of the Nation address. I'd like to assure you of that.
We are not going anywhere.
So we would like you to leave us in peace.
We are not going.
If you are not going, then we have no
Zuma must
option.
go. He's the one who must go.
We have no option.
Office.
We have no option.
He must address the nation from prison, not from there.
The parliamentary protection services
by
come and assist you or persuade you to leave the house.
Shut up, Malema.
I would like to ask that we perhaps allow Honorable Buthelezi to move from that seat and so that for now, until we have assisted these honorable members
You are instituting a coup in the
Zuma
IFP.
is not scared of us. He is scared of your men, not us. We are not going to do anything
must
to
leave the
Buthelezi.
house.
Speaker.
He is the criminal. He's a thief.
I have called on the parliamentary protection
We are not
services
going to leave the
to
house.
come
Let
into
Zuma
the
leave the
chamber
house.
and assist these honorable
Zuma
members.
must leave the house. Zuma must
Honorable
leave the
Malema,
house.
you are the one who's not prepared to go. I hope this gentleman will
You can
persuade.
kill me, it's fine, kill me. Just kill me, there's no problem, kill me.
Yeah. We see honorable members using their heads to harm others.
In 1852, Harriet Beecher Stowe's novel Uncle Tom's Cabin is published. It becomes one of the most influential works to stir anti-slavery sentiments. 1854, Congress passes the Kansas-Nebraska Act establishing the territories of Kansas and Nebraska. The legislation repeals the Missouri Compromise of 1820 and renews tensions between anti- and pro-slavery factions. 1854, violence erupts in Kansas, commonly referred to as Bleeding Kansas or the Border War. 1856, Senator Charles Sumner delivers a stinging speech in the U.S. Senate, The Crime Against Kansas, in which he attacks slavery, the South, and singles out his Senate colleague Andrew Butler of South Carolina for criticism. In retaliation, Butler's nephew, Congressman Preston Brooks of South Carolina, attacks Sumner with a cane while the Massachusetts senator is seated at his desk on the floor of the Senate. The injuries he sustains cause Sumner to be absent from the Senate for 4 years. 1857. The Dred Scott case holds that Congress does not have the right to ban slavery.
Action.
Stop pushing.
In 1849, Harriet Tubman escapes from slavery and becomes one of the most effective and celebrated leaders of the Underground Railroad. 1850. The continuing debate whether territory gained in the Mexican War should be open to slavery is decided in the Compromise of 1850, includes the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. California is admitted as a free state. Utah and New Mexico territories are left to be decided by popular sovereignty, and the slave trade in Washington, D.C. is prohibited. It also establishes a much stricter fugitive slave law than the original, passed in 1793. 1852, Harriet Beecher Stowe's novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin, is published. It becomes one of the most influential works to stir anti-slavery sentiments. 1854, Congress passes the Kansas-Nebraska Act, establishing the territories of Kansas and Nebraska. The legislation repeals the Missouri Compromise of 1820 and renews tensions between anti- and pro-slavery factions. 1854, violence erupts in Kansas, commonly referred to as Bleeding Kansas or the Border War. 1856, Senator Charles Sumner delivers a stinging speech in the U.S. Senate, The Crime Against Kansas, in which he attacks slavery, the South, and singles out his Senate colleague Andrew Butler of South Carolina for criticism. In retaliation, Butler's nephew, Congressman Preston Brooks of South Carolina, attacks Sumner with a cane while the Massachusetts senator is seated at his desk on the floor of the Senate. The injuries he sustains cause Sumner to be absent from the Senate for 4 years. 1857. The Dred Scott case holds that Congress does not have the right to ban slavery in states, and furthermore, that slaves are not U.S. citizens. 1859. John Brown and 21 followers capture the federal arsenal at Harper's Ferry, VA, now West Virginia, in an attempt to launch a slave revolt. 1860. Kentucky Senator John Crittenden proposes 6 amendments to the U.S. Constitution. The amendments contained in the Crittenden Compromise specifically address slavery. 1863. President Abraham Lincoln signs the Emancipation Proclamation. Lincoln, however, initially signed the preliminary Emancipation Proclamation in 1862. 1865, Robert E. Lee surrenders at Appomattox. Scene script 1865, 13th Amendment abolishes slavery. 1865, Reconstruction era begins. It introduces a series of laws, codes, amendments, and acts. Reconstruction era enacts 1865 to 1877. Although African Americans received U.S. citizenship with the ratification of the 14th Amendment in 1868, this has been the awakening. Black women united. I am your host, Sherry Danny. Julius Malema says if African Americans want reparations, you are going to have to fight like